The Denver Broncos are facing some significant changes, and it starts with a tough situation for Sean Payton. Losing key staff members in the coaching lineup can disrupt team dynamics, and Payton now has to fill two critical positions this offseason. Meanwhile, the Eagles made headlines with a major contract extension for linebacker Zack Baun, and the Broncos find themselves in a tricky spot with several decisions to make on their own roster. Let's dive into what's happening and what it means for Denver moving. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. Before moving to the actual news, let me share a setback for Sean Payton. The Denver Broncos will need a new outside linebackers coach in 2025. The Broncos have parted ways with Michael Wilhoite after he was accused of assaulting a police officer. Wilhoite was a special teams assistant under Payton with the New Orleans Saints in 2019, and he later reunited with Payton in 2023 as Denver's outside linebacker coach. The Broncos previously fired inside linebackers coach Greg Manusky earlier this year, so Payton now has to fill both inside linebacker and outside linebacker coaching positions this spring. This is tough for the Broncos, but rules are rules, and it's commendable when a team follows them strictly. Okay, now back to the actual topic. The Eagles have decided to re-sign linebacker Zack Baun, who was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate and a former Saint. It's a big deal. 3 years, $51 million, averaging $17 million per season. This makes him one of the highest paid linebackers in the league. Baun's story is impressive. He started as a special teams player for 4 seasons, signed a 1-year deal with Philly, and now he's turning that into $51 million. This makes him the 4th highest paid linebacker in the league, behind names like Tremaine Edmonds from the Bears, Fred Warner from the 49ers, and Roquan Smith from the Ravens. I initially thought Baun's deal would be more in line with players like Zaire Franklin or Azeez Al-Shaair, but the rising salary cap has pushed contracts higher across the board. While this is great for Baun, it's a bit of a setback for Sean Payton. He had expressed interest in adding a linebacker and has a history of bringing in former players. Baun seemed like a great fit, especially since he was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, finishing just a few spots behind Denver's own Patrick Surtain. So where does this leave Denver at the linebacker position? I've been vocal about the idea of bringing back Cody Barton. He's another player who signed a modest contract and performed well this past season. After Alex Singleton went down, Barton stepped up, and the Broncos' defense didn't miss a beat. Think about it. Denver's defense was one of the best in the league, even without one of their key players in Singleton. There was never a moment where you felt the absence of Singleton was glaring. It's a testament to how well the unit adjusted, but it also raises the question, should Denver focus on retaining Barton to maintain that depth and stability? I thought Cody Barton did a fantastic job stepping in as the team's top inside linebacker. I'm definitely on board with bringing him back. It shouldn't break the bank either. A 2-year, $9 million contract seems reasonable. Give him a little bump, maybe an extra million or two, compared to last season, especially after his strong performance in 2024. The idea of bringing Barton back makes a lot of sense, but we'll have to see if the Broncos decide to aim for a bigger addition at linebacker. Then there's Alex Singleton. His future with the team feels uncertain, largely due to his torn ACL. Singleton is now 31 years old, and as we know, recovering from serious injuries like that gets tougher with age. He's entering the final year of his contract, and if the Broncos release him before June 1st, they'd save $5.5 million in cap space. That's a significant amount for a player in his situation. 31 years old, recovering from a major injury, and in a contract. Now, unless the player is someone highly valued in the locker room or seen as a coach's favorite, the odds of being cut in this kind of scenario are pretty high. I won't say it's guaranteed, but in similar cases, it happens more often than not. Whether Singleton stays or goes feels like a toss-up at the moment. What seems clear, though, is that Denver might be headed toward a new starting inside linebacker duo. It's hard to see them running it back with both Singleton and Barton. They might stick with Singleton if they believe he'll fully recover and still play at a high level, but the cap savings from moving on could be used to bring in a younger, potentially better linebacker. If the Broncos go that route, they'll likely look at some options in free agency. Bobby Wagner continues to play at an elite level, and while he's an intriguing option, it seems likely that the Commanders will bring him back. Then there are names like Willie Gay, Nick Bolton, and Devin Bush, all players worth considering. If Denver is looking for more budget-friendly options, Anthony Walker, Robert Spillane, and EJ Speed come to mind. Speed in particular has been a tackling machine. Dre Greenlaw is another name that stands out. He hasn't just had good moments, but solid seasons with the 49ers. And then there's Devin White, a former top 5 draft pick, and Ernest Jones, who impressed with his performances for the Titans and Seahawks this past season, along with his time with the Rams. Of all the above names, Nick Bolton is the standout. He's arguably the heart and soul of the Chiefs' defense. Bolton is the kind of player who quarterbacks a defense and brings leadership to the middle of the field. Denver might be looking for someone with that level of impact. That said, it's hard to imagine the Chiefs letting him walk without a fight, but free agency can be unpredictable. Another intriguing option is Dre Greenlaw. While he's coming off an Achilles injury he suffered during the Super Bowl, his pre-injury performances in 2022 and 2023 were stellar. If Denver is willing to take a calculated risk, they might get him at a discount due to the injury. This could turn out to be one of those high-value signings that pays off big if he fully recovers. Lastly, let's talk about EJ Speed. He's a tackling machine and an excellent example of how certain teams consistently produce great players at specific positions. The Colts, for instance, have a knack for developing linebackers. Even if they let Speed walk, they'll probably find another gem. It reminds me of that Colts linebacker who was an All-Pro and came out of South Carolina State. He changed his name, and I'm sure some of you are already shouting his name in the comments. The point is, teams like the Colts seem to have a formula for success at certain positions, and Speed could be a hidden gem for Denver. Now let's shift gears to another topic that's buzzing: DK Metcalf potentially being on the move and possibly landing with the Broncos. Before diving into that, though, let's address something important. What do you think is the Broncos' biggest need in free agency? Think about it strategically. The draft and free agency are different beasts. For the draft, you might target a running back or tight end, but in free agency, you need to match your team's needs with the strengths of the free agent class. Let's say the team has $50 million to spend. If running back is a top need, but the market is weak for that position, it wouldn't make sense to spend a big chunk of that budget there. Instead, focus on positions with strong talent available, like linebacker, for example, in this year's class. Now, switching to DK Metcalf, the Seahawks' star wide receiver reportedly requested a trade today, according to multiple NFL insiders like Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter. Metcalf still has 1 year left on the 3-year, $72 million contract he signed a couple of off-seasons ago. At just 27 years old, he's still in his prime with plenty of gas left in the tank. DK Metcalf is undoubtedly an accomplished wide receiver. His numbers speak for themselves. He's never had less than 900 receiving yards in any of his 6 NFL seasons. Just 2 years ago, he put up over 1,100 yards with 8 touchdowns, and 3 years ago, he had over 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns, with 48 career touchdowns, including a 12-touchdown season in 2021. Metcalf has been a consistent playmaker. That said, I'm not entirely blown away by this trade request for a few reasons. First, it seemed like Seattle was already starting to shift its focus toward Jackson Smith-Njigba as the centerpiece of their passing game. DK's targets were trending downward, while Smith-Njigba's were increasing. On top of that, it feels like Metcalf might sense his time in Seattle has run its course. The team dynamic has changed significantly since he joined, going from Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson to Geno Smith and a new offensive vision under Mike McDonald. That might not align with how DK sees his role in the offense anymore. There are still plenty of teams that would be interested in Metcalf, even if he hasn't been as dominant recently as he was a few seasons ago. Adding to this, the wide receiver draft class this year is weak. Not everyone will agree, but I don't think any of these receivers would have been first-round picks in last year's draft. That lack of top-tier talent gives free agent wide receivers a big advantage. It's not hard to see the pattern here. Look at how running backs like Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and Derrick Henry got paid last offseason. Why? Because the running back draft class was underwhelming. In fact, I don't think a single running back went in the top 50 picks. Jonathan Brooks was the first one selected, around pick 45 if I'm not mistaken. The point is simple. When a draft class is weak at a particular position, free agents at that same position benefit. Teams can't rely on the draft to fill their needs, so they're forced to spend more in free agency. That's exactly why wide receiver free agents could see a big payday this offseason. Teams need to address their needs now, and they can't count on the draft to provide cheaper, better options in April. It's not good to see the Broncos end up overpaying for a wide receiver just because the market is inflated due to doubts about the draft. That doesn't mean I'm completely out on the idea, but it's why I'm not jumping in head first to say, yes, trade for DK Metcalf no matter what. Whether or not the Broncos make the move remains to be seen, but here's my estimate of what it might cost. Metcalf to Denver for a 3rd-round pick. So, guys, what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comment section.